Alright, so my first Peaks of Yore video actually had a surprising amount of feedback, and I saw the amount of views that I got, and I saw some of the nice comments that I saw, and I really appreciate everybody that saw that video. So I figured it would only make sense for me to make another Peaks of Yore video. But I'm not gonna just do the same thing I did last time, where I pretty much just praise the game and talk about why I think it's the best climbing game ever made, even though I think it is. Today I want to do something a little bit interesting, where I want to go into the early versions of Peaks of Yore. Pretty much just what I want to do now is, what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be going to the creator of the game's YouTube channel. Because I'm not really one to like go through game files and like look for early things that aren't in games. I'm not really skillful at that. But I'm going to go to the creator's YouTube channel and pretty much just look at all the early videos leading up to the release of Peaks of Yore, just to kind of see like where the inspiration came from, where some of the elements of the game got changed, where you know, some things were slowly beginning to be added, all leading up to the release of the game, as well as I'm going to be taking a look at the Peaks of Yore demo that the creator released, which some people do not, actually funny enough, don't really know exists. But yes, there was a Peaks of Yore demo, but we will be getting into that in a little bit. So for now, we're just going to start at some of the earliest videos that he posted, and we're going to just kind of go from there, and I hope you guys enjoy. Now, the first video I want to get into is not specifically related to Peaks of Yore. Rather, I kind of just want to get into it to make a point, with the first video on the creator's channel being called GGJ A Night's Fee, which the GGJ stands for Global Game Jam, like it was made for a game jam. And it's kind of an interesting video. It's mostly just a video of what appears to be some kind of knight fighting in an open field against like knights in some kind of like medieval war. Pretty cool stuff. I know it has nothing to do with Peaks of Yore, but I specifically wanted to show this just to kind of show that this is kind of where the art style kind of started to show. Like the creator's early videos mostly were about like high HD graphics showing off stuff, but this is the first video he posted that kind of has a similar art style to Peaks of Yore, being like, you know, it's like, it's kind of pixelated, it's like kind of low poly. It still looks really nice, but like I just wanted to show this mainly to show that this was the first showing of what I would see as like the Peaks of Yore art style. Then we get into the first video that actually has something to do with Peaks of Yore, though still not being directly related to it, being gameplay of a game that he made called Brush and Biz, which is kind of an interesting name, and the game itself isn't too awful crazy, as the video starts with what appears to be some kind of toothbrush being thrown on the table, and the entire game you just simply have to brush dirt off of objects, which, if you've played Peaks of Yore, or you've seen gameplay of Peaks of Yore, you would know that that is a mechanic you do in the game for when you get collectibles, where you have to go back to your cabin and brush all the dirt and debris and stuff off of them. This video also isn't too crazy, but it definitely has more of the Peaks of Yore art style, though I will admit it has an insanely noticeable like film grain to it. Like, it is so unbelievably noticeable. But it's actually kind of interesting, and it's mostly just a game about brushing dirt off of stuff. And funny enough, this game did also get a demo that you could play on the creator's itch.io page, which, you know, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool and interesting. Now, this next video is going to be kind of out of order, because the way the dev did it, I don't know how he uploaded it, but these videos are kind of uploaded out of order, so I'm going to do them in the order that I think makes sense, being the first one being the Peaks of Yore prototype. And if you saw my first video on Peaks of Yore, you would have seen that I showed a quick little glimpse of this video, where it's a very simple video of some 2D hands climbing on some red boxes and not being able to climb on the red boxes. And it's a pretty simple concept for Peaks of Yore, just showing, you know, what the game is going to be like, where you're just going to be climbing up things with your bare hands, and you have to try and avoid certain things while trying to climb up, you know, very high and tall, like mountains and stuff like that. Pretty early prototype of the game, but you know, you can see the game just through this video. You can pretty much see what the game looks like. And then that leads into the Peaks of Yore early gameplay footage, which this part is actually very interesting. But like I said before, for some reason the early gameplay was shown off before the prototype on his channel, so again, weird, out of order, so... But anyways, yeah, the Peaks of Yore early gameplay is actually fairly interesting, as there is a lot of changes in this video that got changed in the final game. Such as, at the start of the video, he shows off the Mountain Paltry Peak, which is in the final game, and it does look significantly different than this, rather than being kind of something you have to go diagonal around. Paltry Peak in the final game is more just kind of a straight up thing because it teaches you how to pull yourself up. And in the gameplay, it's pretty simple. And it's also really weird because the environment, it doesn't really seem to be much of an environment around him. It's more just kind of like open, like there's just nothing around him. But anyways, yeah, you can see the character climbing up the mountain. The hands are a little bit like, they're still like a work in progress. They still look fairly old, and the sleeves don't really have any detail to them. But when he gets to the top, it mentions how to climb a ledge. You can hold left and right click and pull yourself up, which is pretty much in the final game as well. But yeah, it's interesting to see how different this mountain got changed to the final game. And then we get into the second mountain he shows off, which is really interesting, called Devil's Trenchcoat. And this one isn't in the final game. And it is a fairly simple mountain. This almost reminds me of Paltry Peak in the final game, because this mountain tells you how to perform what the game calls a dino jump. I don't really understand it. Pretty much just telling you that if you pull yourself up, you can swing at the same time and get an insane jump. That's pretty much what this mountain does, which I feel like Paltry Peak in the final game does anyways. So it makes sense not to include both. But this mountain is pretty interesting, as well as the fact that there's no stamps in these levels. He kind of just gets to the top and it goes to the next mountain. So whether or not he planned to have a stamp feature as a way to like submit that you climbed a mountain, I'm not sure, but overall still a pretty interesting video. Being able to see some of the changes that were made early on, or some of the early things, like I said, with the hands and the sleeves not having been fully like made yet. It's very interesting to see overall. Now, the next video that we're going to be looking at is the Peaks of Yore gameplay trailer, which this video is mainly just showing off the gameplay of what the final game is going to be like. And it's not that much different from the final game. Like, most of the mountains look pretty similar. There might be like something changed here and there. But it's overall basically just the game that we have today, only just, you know, it's not released yet. Like, it looks pretty similar. The mountains are pretty much the same. This was when it was shown off with the mechanic of the stamps. There was also, the only real differences I noticed was, for one, the fact that, in order to get a rope and stuff out, you have to, he pulled it off of his side instead of just having a keybind, but I don't know, he may have done that for the, trailer, just to show, like, what it's gonna be like. There is a small clip of him doing the brushing minigame, which is very interesting because, it didn't have the same little design of the debris that we have in the final game. It kind of just looks more like black splotches, but I don't know, maybe he just wasn't finished with it yet. He just wanted to show it off. The other difference I noticed is that in this clip there is some rocks falling down this one mountain, which is in the final game, but except the rocks aren't really moving around. They kind of just sit there. They just sit still as they fall, which just kind of looks really funny. And at the end, we see a clip of what looks to be some kind of ice mountain. It doesn't look like the Great Bulwark or Solemn Tempest in any way. So, I don't know, maybe he just designed something special for the trailer. But it's also really weird, because at the very end of the trailer, while he's climbing up what appears to be the same mountain, there's some kind of avalanche that appears. So, I'm not really sure where to go from there. It just seems really weird, because, like, you know, there's no actual footage. There's actually, like, we don't see this in the game anywhere. Like, this doesn't look like the Great Bulwark or Tempest in any way. So, my only assumption is that they made it just for this trailer, like nothing too crazy. And then after that, we got some fairly simple videos. Like, we got a video showing off the wind vane, which is a little bit upsetting because I kind of wish that the wind vane was used a lot more in the game. It was kind of mainly just for like one mountain, and it was the mountain that introduces the wind mechanic. Because by the time you get to like because Solemn Tempest, as far as I know, is like the only other mountain that has wind on it, and you don't really have a tool in the game to determine the wind. You kind of just have to look at the particles to tell where the wind is coming from. So overall, like, I see why he showed it off, but the fact that it only really made sense for like 2 mountains, just kind of interesting, but it's not really like anything crazy. And then the last videos on his channel showed off a color mode for the game, which is very interesting to me because it kind of shows like he wasn't planning to have a color mode from the beginning. It was supposed to be a black and white themed experience, which makes sense given that it was in the 1800s. So I kind of like the idea of it, and I pretty much played through the entire game up to Solemn Tempest with the black and white mode on my first playthrough. So I see why he added the color mode though, and then just the video showing off that Peaks of Yore is available now. So the next thing I want to get into is actually the gameplay demo that was released on the creator's itch.io page, which has some major differences, some minor differences, but you guys will be able to see for yourself once we get into the demo now. Alright, so this is the part I've been waiting for, being the Peaks of Yore demo that was released on the creator's itch.io page. That is still up to this day. Like, you can still go ahead and download it if you just want to look into the demo for yourself. But I'm pretty much going to be showing off just everything that I have to show in this demo. And when you first start up the demo, you actually get a early rendition of the title screen, where it kind of has more of a white and black look rather than kind of like the tannish looking color, as well as the main guy on the screen doesn't move. It's just a still image, and of course it has the words of the demo on it. You know, just very, very, very basic things. And then when you actually start the game, you start in the cabin, which looks about the same, only it doesn't have the bullet board with like the map and all the extra stuff on it, but I'm pretty sure some of that stuff was added at a later time, so I'm not very surprised that it's not here yet. But the cabin still overall looks pretty much the same. And then you actually do still have the first book of mountains. You only get 5 to choose from in this demo, which makes sense, like just to give you an idea of how the game works. So starting on the mountain Greenhorn's top, it's pretty much the exact same, only there's no guy at the top to greet you and talk to you about doing the peak bagging challenge. You're pretty much just thrown straight into it, as well as the game is in a permanent black and white feature, so you know, I guess during this time of the demo, it wasn't determined to have a color mode yet. But the game overall is pretty much the exact same. Like, there's not really any differences from this and the final game. Like, it still even shows the tutorial tips on how to swing with your hands. And it does include the Summit Stamper, which, funny enough, instead of having the modern day animation where you see your character physically holding the book and the stamp, it actually just cuts to a screen of the book being opened and the stamp being placed down. Though in earlier versions of the game when it first came out, this was in the final game, and I do remember it, so it was added at a later time. And one thing that I also want to mention quickly is that in the loading screens, it has the option of pressing a key to continue instead of just loading you into the game, which, like, I didn't realize it at first, and I sat there for like 2 minutes with my recording software open, just wondering why it's not loading, and then I realized it said press any key to continue, and I'm like, what? So I'm glad that he removed that, because I would have never known. After completing the first mountain, I get a knock at my door to get the record player. And this is one of the bigger differences in this demo, being that there's no person there to actually greet you or have little chats with you throughout this entire demo. It's just a black background with text of the person talking to you, and then you just get the package, which I understand, like you know, like maybe he didn't have that implemented by the time the demo released. But it was weird because in the early gameplay, it showed off a clip of one of the people handing you a package. So, not sure the timeline between that gameplay and this demo, but it's whatever. It's still a fun demo overall. Then we moved to Paltry Peak, which did get its change into what it is today. as well as the environment was finally able to be seen like in the distance instead of it being just like a foggy void almost. And yeah, pretty much Paltry Peak, the exact same as it is in the final game, teaches you how to pull yourself up and just being able to swing yourself upwards to get to the top of the mountain. Overall, pretty basic stuff. And then once you go back to your cabin again, then you get sent to the old mill, which is the windmill stage in the game. And this is where you see the first collectible. And as far as I know, this is the only collectible in the demo. So I'm not very surprised. As you can see in the video, I just realized it was there. So I was pretty determined to grab it to see if there was any notable differences. And once you collect it and go back home, you do the same mini game that you do in the final game, as well as in the trailer in the video for Brush and Biz, where you just brush all the dirt and debris off. And even in this demo, it still seems to have just the regular black splotches and not the pretty textured like little debris, which is fine, you know, it makes sense. And then we go into Great Gully, and I did try and look for the collectible on this mountain for a little bit just to realize it wasn't even there. And I spent a little bit of too much time trying to look for secrets and stuff here, and also just trying to see if there was any major differences with the swinging and stuff, which it didn't seem like there was. So it seems like the swinging and stuff was pretty much figured out by the time that this demo came out, which is still a nice thing to see. After going back to the cabin, I see my good friend Wally the Seagull at my window, as well as another knock on the door. And this is where I get the rope, as well as the rope, pretty much just the rope and nails. And yeah, and you start with 2 in this one, but as you climb the mountains, there's not really any counter to tell you how many ropes you have, so I kind of just had to figure it out by just playing the game, pretty much. Which, you know, it's fine. And then next we get to the next mountain, Old Man of Sijor. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And also there's no coffee or chalk or anything in this demo. It's mostly just the ropes. And one thing that is really interesting, even because I made a point about it in the gameplay video, is you really do have to just go onto your utility belt and pick up the rope yourself. Or grab the hammer yourself. I looked in the settings. There's no keybinds for the rope or anything. There's keybinds to climb up the rope and stuff, and like detach from the rope. But in order to detach from a rope, you have to press E on it instead of just pressing T, which is the default keybind. So yeah, it was really awkward to have to manually go down and grab a rope. So I totally understand why the dev added keybinds for it, because like, it would have been a nightmare to climb mountains and then have to quickly look down to grab the rope, especially with all the other tools that are in the game. But overall, this mountain is, well, pretty much the exact same. There's seagulls on it that can knock you off. And I did also, in fact, test to see if the seagulls could be knocked away after they try to come after you. And they can. So, you know, pretty overall, just the same type of mountain. It's whatever. And then once you finish that, you actually complete the demo, and somebody comes to your door, says congratulations, you've conquered all the peaks of the demo, and then he says, now for a proper challenge. And there it is, the cut ice mountain. I'm pretty sure that's pronounced smaller glyphos. I don't know how to pronounce that, but this is the cut mountain that was shown off in the gameplay trailer, showing off the ice mechanics as well as the ice pickaxes and just overall the snowy environment. Which, like, the fact that this isn't in the final game is just insane to me, because it looks almost finished. Like, it has, and I also had to check for keybinds as well in this one, because the pickaxes also have to be grabbed manually off of your belt, and it's honestly even worse than the rope, because you have to stab your ice pickaxe into one icicle before being able to grab your second one, so you can't just grab both. But yeah, I had to check and see if there was any keybinds for the pickaxes. There is none, so, you know, that was also kind of a bit of a hassle to deal with. But the fact that this isn't in the final game is a little bit, like, it's just so interesting to me because it has pretty much the similar things that things like the Bulwark and Solemn Tempest have, where it has really thin icicles that can break if you touch the lower bits of them. It has giant ice patches. It has the snow that you have to knock away to be able to grab at certain ice, like icicles and stuff like that. It also has a unused something that I'm going to only refer to as an ice sheet, where it's just a really thin, like, piece of ice that you can, you know, stab your pickaxes into, and this isn't in the final game at all. And I don't know if it's the demo or if I'm just going crazy, but I feel like the pickaxes are just, like, honestly worse compared to the final game, and I know people are going to be like, well, it's actually just the demo, so of course they're not going to be perfect, but, like, it's just one of those things where it's like, when I've played, the fact that I've played Peaks of Yore for so many hours, you know, trying to play the same way I do normally, and trying to use these pickaxes, it just felt really weird. Like, the pickaxes, for some reason, every time I would swing the pickaxes, they almost felt like they would swing outwards rather than inwards. Like, they kind of swung to the left and right, like going out rather than going in, which felt really awkward because it felt like I had to turn my camera really far to the sides just to be able to get one of my pickaxes to hit. And that was odd. That was just really disorienting. Like, I'm just gonna show it here, like, if anybody else kind of sees what I mean, because it just feels weird, and, like, I don't know how I feel. Like, I can't tell if I'm just, like, complaining or, like, if it's actually different. It's hard for me to tell. But also, a lot of the times, the giant ice patches that I have to grab onto didn't really feel fully finished. Like, there was a lot of times where I would stab into the ice and my pickaxes kind of just slid off of it rather than stabbing into it. Like, another feature that I know was probably changed for the demo, but, like, it just felt like there was a lot of times where, like, I can literally stab my pickaxes in and it just didn't do anything. And yeah, like, it overall doesn't look that much different from a regular ice mountain. It almost just kind of looks like the tutorial before the Great Bulwark, to be fair, because it just shows you how the ice and stuff works, and it's not really that bad of a mountain. Like, I wouldn't be surprised. My only theory going on right now in my mind is that maybe the dev is bringing this back for the DLC, because he did show off screenshots of ice mountains being in the DLC. So, I don't know, maybe we'll see this one again as, like, a tutorial for just doing ice mountains in general. But overall, it was definitely a very interesting thing to climb, and the pickaxes were definitely probably my biggest issue here, just for the fact that they just felt very incomplete compared to the final game. So I'm glad that they got changed and they just work a lot better in the final game. And when you get up to a certain point, you get to this point where you are on an ice patch and you have to climb up these, like, rocks and ice patches kind of in between each other, kind of like showing off the mechanic of having to put your pickaxe down and grab some rocks, when the same avalanche from the trailer actually comes in and brushes you away, and then it just cuts to some text saying to thanks for climbing through the demo, and telling people to wishlist the game for when the game releases on Steam. And then that's it. That's the entire demo of Peaks of Yore. So there's 5 mountains with an additional 6 mountain that's not fully finished, and there's one collectible to show you how the collectible mechanic works, and there's the rope. There's the rope and nails to show you the idea of just how using your tools will work in the final game. And yeah, this demo overall, like, was pretty close to the final game, with some smaller changes to the game, and then some big ones, like this entire cut ice mountain that, I don't know, like, it just felt so weird to me to see a new mountain in Peaks of Yore that I've never seen before, only to see it in the demo and then just climbing it for the first time. I felt like I was, like, back to playing the game for the first time, just seeing this one mountain I've never seen before. Like, I don't know, it's a hard feeling to describe unless you've, like, played Peaks of Yore and you understand that feeling of seeing a mountain for the first time and then climbing it and having no idea what you're doing. But overall, still a pretty fun demo, and, you know, does seem pretty close to the final game leading up to the final Peaks of Yore that we have today. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, I still love Peaks of Yore to this day. It's one of my favorite climbing games of all time. The game is absolutely amazing, and I did definitely enjoy looking at some of the early footage to see just how much this game has changed, since a lot of people that play the game today probably didn't really look into it beforehand, so they didn't really get to see the development of this game. So it's kind of interesting to see what the game was like before we got the official release. But yeah, so thank you so much for watching. Make sure to check out my other Peaks of Yore video if you're interested. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you're new. I'm trying to, be a little bit more consistent with posting videos. I have a bunch of videos in the works right now, so just stay tuned for that. And yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.